Hello, all of you gorgeous, gorgeous souls.
Hello.
Ooh, we are back. Today we're going to be speaking and touching in a really important topic about the metaphorical concept of death and rebirth, as well as death and rebirth, really. And it's an interesting piece because we humans are cyclical nature, especially women. But all of us humans are, and we cycle with the seasons of change. And when I say the seasons of change, I mean, right now in Australia and New Zealand, we are in autumn. So we're in a phase of like going into deep rest where things are dying. And, metaphorically speaking, I know I'm constantly transitioning, that I'm going into a really deep state of, you could call it identity crisis. You could call it ego death. You could call it a spiritual awakening. You could call it a death and rebirth. Whatever aligns, but it's all really the same thing. And it's a death and rebirth cycle. And Mon and I thought that it would be really beautiful to share into that and what that looks like, how it feels like, what it could look like in the body, how the body responds as well. For
Mhm.
me, myself, at the moment today, I feel really tired, really energetically tired. And it's because I've had a lot, a lot that's come up for me. And it's really beautiful because when things come up or things start to die, after the death process is always a rebirth, right? And yeah, we really love to lean in and speak into that. Mon, I know that you've got a really beautiful journey that you have been on for a little while now, and I was just wondering if you would love to share into that and what that death and rebirth cycle has looked like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important when we say that we're speaking into death and rebirth. When we say that we're speaking into death, we don't mean like a literal death. As Danny said, we mean like the death of an ego or the death of the self that we thought we were supposed to be. Or it might be the letting go and the ending of a cycle of like a relationship, a job, a living situation. So it's really important when we say we're speaking into death and rebirth. Death is the ending and the letting go of something, and rebirth is the new beginning.
Mm,
And so things always need to die in order for new things to come in.
mhm,
And I heard this saying, and it really helped me like visualize it when I first learned death and rebirth. And it was like, imagine you have a two-car garage, right? And there are already two cars in the garage. You can't fit any new cars in there. But if you take out the two cars in the garage and you let them go, you invite new cars back in. And it's kind of like that in our world and in our soul. As we let go, we allow space for the new to come in. And death is this piece that is so necessary because it creates such a space, this like fertile ground where we can go deep into our darkness and potentially our pain and feel like a loss of self in this death cycle. But on the other side of that, we get to discover a deeper depth of our authenticity and who we are. And we get to let everything that we are not, that we have discovered in that death phase, we get to let it all die away. And I feel like in today's society, most of us are either disconnected from this cycle, or I feel like we're afraid of like what's going to die, or we're afraid to let go, we're afraid to surrender, we're afraid to end things even though we know we don't want them.
It's a really beautiful piece to speak into, Mon, because like I hear this all the time. The phrase that I'm not myself lately, or I'm just
Mm.
not feeling myself. And that's a really important piece and a red flag
Yeah.
into saying, yeah, of course you're not yourself, because your higher self is trying to become someone else. It's trying to let something go that does not serve you in order for you to grow and be reborn. or something to be reborn within you.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a common piece. And I remember saying that, like, I used to feel like I wasn't myself, or I had lost myself, or I like always had a sense of something was missing. And it was this piece of I was constantly choosing my comfort zone. And we will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven because what is familiar to us feels safe. And so it's easy to stay in our comfort zones, even when things are not working. Like even when your job's not the job you desire, your friendships are not your friendships that you want. Your relationship feels like it's toxic and it's bad for you. But it's easier to stay because it feels safe in our nervous systems. Our nervous systems are designed for safety.
Mm. And our brains and our psyche is designed for comfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's this piece of like, as we learn our cyclical nature and we start to understand what it feels like to go through these death cycles and these rebirth cycles, we are able to start to celebrate these phases.
Mm.
And we're able to start to prepare and know that good and better and more aligned things are coming when we're in these phases. And we are able to surrender to deeper depth because we are connected with the ongoing and the never ending death and rebirth in our lives.
And the beauty is that the beauty of it is when you start to understand that there's like when you start to go through death and rebirth cycles metaphorically, you realize that afterwards it's actually not that scary. So then when you start to acknowledge that it's happening again, you can kind of shift that mentality and that physiology and that energetically to invite it in, and it's a whole new different process of a death and rebirth then. You know, it's like, yes, this is about to happen. All right, let's go. Let's go. Torches blazing, head straight in and allow it to happen. And it happens a lot quicker and a lot more gentler. And it cannot be like it doesn't end up being so dark and scary and traumatic. It can be much of more of a gentle process.
Yeah, I truly feel that. And something that I've really had to lean into the more that I understand the death cycle is mourning all of the endings, like grieving the endings and they're letting go of whatever it is that is ending and I'm letting go of. And I feel like this is a piece that we don't really do or that we're not really exposed to or taught because of the heavy masculine energy in today's culture. It's like we're always looking for progress and what's next. But in order to honor the death and rebirth cycle, we must grieve and feel the emotions that come with the ending and the letting go of the parts of ourselves that we are letting go of before we come into the rebirth. And that often contributes to such darkness and heaviness when we are in that death phase because we're letting go and mourning what is dying within us.
Such a powerful piece, Mon. Such a powerful piece. Like really allowing that mourning to happen and that grieving to happen.
Yeah. And I feel like this is what I have been living in a lot lately. Like honestly, a lot. For those of you that don't know, about 3 months ago, my partner and I relocated to a small little village on the side of a lake, and it's so beautiful. It's in the countryside. We are covered in nature. There's not many people around us, and I think there's like 120 people approximately in this village. And previously, 3 months ago, for my entire life, I lived in a town that had 130,000 plus people. So where I'm living right now is very new to me, and it's still very new to me. And we moved here because I felt out of alignment with where I was living. I didn't feel out of alignment with how I was living. I felt out of alignment with where I was living. And we were honestly on a silver platter given the opportunity to move here. And it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, universe, I'm coming. And when we first moved here, like for the first few weeks, it was like I was on a holiday. I felt really light. I felt so carefree. My days were so calm. Like it was almost like a little bit of like a pinch me moment. Like I'm really here. This is my life. And I can honestly remember the moment that I had this calling and this ache in my body, and I shared it with my partner, and we were sitting on the side of the lake. And I turned to my partner and I was like, babe, I don't want to work anymore. I don't want any responsibility. I don't want to do anything. All I want to do is be in nature and be in my body. And I said to him, I don't know why. I know it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense to me, but I really need this time. And I can remember crying as I was telling him this because this toxic masculine energy within me was like, this is bad and wrong. What are you doing? Build your business, make money, progress, buy more houses, blah, 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 blah.
Do.
And I do. And I knew that I didn't want to be in that energy anymore. And I was learning how to heal that energy. And so I literally did. I stopped working. So I haven't been working for 2.5 months now. I let go of all responsibilities. I did not want to have any responsibility of posting on social media, of messaging people, of reaching out to people, of communicating or having pressure to do anything. I didn't want any of it. And in doing this, within about, I would say, like a week or two of making these changes, I started to feel very heavy. And I felt like I was losing myself. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore or what my purpose was. Like without my job, without living in a busy city, without having this routine, without having any structure. And I felt really confused and lost.
You must lose yourself in order to find yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was this interesting piece of like, I felt so confused and lost, but in the midst of it, when I shut my eyes at my altar, it was like this knowing of I fucking need to do this. And I am exactly where I need to be and I need to trust. And so over the past few months, I have spent amples of time at my altar in my body, like going inwards and going into nature and learning how to like deeply understand myself and having days where I just cry, having days where I'm angry at the world for all the conditioning that I received and all the women that are suffering right now, like feeling all these emotions that have come up through me in this time. And I've been so lucky to have like this deep understanding of how to connect with my body that I have developed. But I've also been so lucky to have sisters that understand the work that I'm doing and that can hold me through a lot of the heaviness that I've felt.
So important.
Yeah. And I know like the times I grow the most, the times I lose myself.
Mm.
And it's in the darkness when you don't know who you are anymore, but you surrender to that instead of fearing that, that you're able to rebirth into something that is more aligned with the truth of your soul, with who
So
you really are. And so and it's not like you go to sleep on a Friday, then you wake up on a Saturday and you're rebirth,
mm.
right? This process does not have a time. This process is different for everyone. You don't know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what it's going to look like, but it's surrendering and trusting the inner knowing in your body and just leading with your body.
Something that's really coming up for me to share right now is in my very first ayahuasca journey. I went through an ego death, and I went through a physical point where it felt like, and it sensed like my whole body was actually dying. and and it wasn't until I had this experience and I realized like the depth of the pain, the sorrow, the grief, and everything that I experienced in that, and then what I saw then on the other side. And for anyone who doesn't know ayahuasca, I've spoken about it in podcasts before. Ayahuasca is a plant medicine, and it is a medicine, and it is a very big teacher. It's like the mushroom, right? It's a very internal process, and it will take you into your darkness. It will give you the things that you need, not what you want. And in this process, Mon, it wasn't until I had fully surrendered to the fact that I was about to die as an old native shaman woman, then I was physically dying and I was being held by the actual shaman that was there. And she was mourning for me and mourning my death. And then after I died through this experience, I died again and then again. And it was just a way of purging, right? But after this experience, I physically had a rebirth process, like to the point that I actually birthed something from my womb space. It was really intense, really, really magical. And from that ayahuasca journey, what I have really learnt with all of the death and rebirth processes that I've had, like after that, even prior to that, but most definitely after, is it's the exact same process. You've got to learn, you've got to surrender and let go. Whatever is about to happen is going to happen, whether you like it or not, or whether you allow it to or not. The only thing that's going to change is the process of it. So the process may be you allow it and invite it in and go, okay, yep, this is about to happen, or you resist it, but then ultimately it's just going to cause more grief and more suffering and more pain. And that's metaphorically, or that's within an ayahuasca in the spirit world, or that's within the 3D world, but that we're living right now.
Mm. Yeah, and that's such a big piece is if we do not surrender to the death process is we get stuck in the same cycles and we repeat the same stuff that we want to let go of, that we don't want to be with, that we don't want to be repeating, that we don't want these relationships, these friendships, this grief that we're feeling, the sadness that we're feeling, all the things that we're resisting, they persist because we're not surrendering. So we stay in the same cycles. And you can see it like a lot of my loved ones are in the same cycles. A lot of my family are in the same cycles, and it's just this piece of surrendering and letting go that is actually really hard to practice. But on the other side of that is so much alignment and so much resonance with your soul. And like since living here and going through such a huge death, the way I understand myself and the way I hold myself and the way I communicate with myself and care for myself and what I allow around me has deeply, deeply transformed. Like, so for example, like,
Proud of your system.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. And for example, like just some small changes that I noticed that are actually really big changes is like I have communicated with my partner exactly how I need to be held at different times of the month so that he can hold me in the ways that I need. I've communicated with him when my inner critic is the loudest because of my hormones and my cycle and how I can better show up for him. Right? Because when my inner critic is loud, it's obviously attacking myself, but then it impacts our relationship. I've communicated with friends that have done things in the past that have felt out of alignment for me, and I needed to bring voice to them. I've learned how to deeply hold my inner child in ways that I didn't know was possible. I've learned how to move through emotions in new ways. I move my body in new ways. I'm eating differently. I'm dressing differently. I have different desires. I have a whole different way of thinking and being. And these might sound like little things, but the way I feel and who I am now is so completely different to who I was 3 months ago that it is so profound to put words to. And it's because I was willing to let go. I was so deeply willing to let go of all that I knew was no longer mine to hold. And now all of this abundance has come in, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for where I'm at. But this birth of all this newness would not have come in if I didn't surrender to the death and the pain of that death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to speak into because I know for you it was the moving into such a beautiful rural town. And uh, for me, I went through the exact same process as we do. We're aligned with everything, so aligned. Oh my gosh,
Yes,
so
we are.
right, so interesting. But yeah, for me, it was the calling in of the medicine drum, and yeah, really learning the shamanic ways. For myself, I've had continuous death and rebirth cycles over and over and over again for the past, well, for a very long time, but especially in the past, I'd say maybe 4 months. It's just been a continuous cycle, which is really beautiful because, to say that you knew me 5 months ago, it's like, whoa, I don't think you really do because so much has happened, right? Like, we talk
Yeah.
about this off mic, and we're just like, holy fucking shit. Like, imagine if we spoke about everything that we went through, like, or everything that we
Mhm.
invite in, every few weeks. And what's really interesting is that this death and rebirth cycle, when it comes for women anyway, is that we have a death and rebirth cycle every single month anyway.
Yeah.
Like, spiritually, we have one through every single menstrual cycle, and whether you're menstruating or not, you still have it. You're still cyclical nature. We are connected to nature, right? But we
Mhm.
have this really beautiful death and rebirth cycle. Like, I'm on day 5, so I'm on the last day of my beautiful sacred moon cycle right now,
Mm.
and I physically felt like that I actually had like a death and rebirth on day 1, which was really phenomenal for me. And I didn't see it coming.
Mm.
Yeah, which was really beautiful. And when I say that I had like a death and rebirth on day 1, like, I physically felt so connected to my menstrual cycle, my blood, and the phase that I was going through, that I've never been so connected before. And I could feel like the layers being ripped from like my womb space as I like bled. And it was so incredible. It might sound really scary, or it might sound like, oh, that doesn't sound very nice, but it was actually really beautiful to be able to be so connected deeply to my womb and to my body, and to allow that cycle to happen, because since then it's allowed other death and rebirths to continue to flow throughout my days and throughout my times. Like, at the moment, I wasn't going to speak into this, but I am feeling very called to share this right now. I'm currently going through a death and rebirth cycle with my toxic masculine, and potentially some toxic feminine as well that's arising within me. I I am a mum to 3 kids, and I've been a single mum for a very long time. And I had this piece that's come up for me in the past 24 hours, really, that has been there for about 12 months, that I haven't acknowledged. And I haven't acknowledged because I've had this toxin masculinity come through by saying, I have to give my kids the absolute best. I have to make sure that, my children have the absolute best of the best. And I'm not talking material things. I'm talking safety and love, and a container of deep inner healing. I've been raising a really beautiful, challenging, marvelous daughter at the age of 16 right now, and things have been really, really tough. And there's been some things that have been arising for me, like my inner 16-year-old self and my inner child, and all of these pieces that have been moved through me. And if I hadn't invited in that process and really looked deeper, then I wouldn't know what the fuck was happening. I'd just be thinking, oh my God, I can't deal with this. Well, those words, I can't deal with this, or I can't handle this is a death process. Metaphorically, it's a part of us saying this needs to die in order for new to be reborn. And because of that process, now I'm able to see things from a different perspective, and a deep inner compassion for not only for my beautiful daughter, but for myself and for the things that I actually need, which, may be, which is actually a step away for a little while, a step away
Mhm.
so I can do deep inner healing. And I know what that looks like because I've done it before and profoundly. But I know that by being able to look at my toxic masculine, which is the I can do this, I've got this, I don't need no one, I'm fine as a single mom. Like, no, I'm fucking not. I'm struggling. There's a
Yeah.
part of me that's like, no, you're lonely as a parent, not lonely as in a partner or within myself, absolutely not. But doing it on my own as a parent, it's hard, especially when challenges arise. So it's a really beautiful process to allow and invite in that death, which is happening now, as I'm
Mhm.
feeling currently right now. The way that death shows up metaphorically or energetically, spiritually within the body can be, the Western culture will call it depression, which is deep rest, right? The body may feel really tired. It might be purging. It might go through a state of grief or movement or crying or shaking or not wanting to do things. Or it might look like wanting to spend time in nature 24/7, which is me, right?
Mhm.
24/7, and just wanting to sit with mama cacao and just wanting to be in meditation, be in all the love, and let's just go for another walk. Have another cacao. Right? Move through it. Fuck, let's do another drum ceremony. Like, but it gets exhausting and it gets tired,
Mhm.
right? And to know that death must happen in order for that rebirth to take place. But yeah, again, that can look like so many ways that the body can move through that. But just allowing myself, allowing yourself, if you're going through this or feeling this, to just surrender into what your body needs, canceling your day, going to bed, getting yourself all dressed up, going for a nice gentle walk, whatever that looks like, allowing that to be, because that's what's been coming up for me. And what I will be doing for the rest of the day will be taking my earrings and my necklace off, getting back in my pajamas and going sitting in the forest with a cup of fucking cacao.
Yeah.
moving through what needs to happen for the rebirth to come through, and just giving myself permission to step away and surrender into what's about to unfold.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's such a big piece that a lot of single moms can probably resonate with, or even not single moms. And your ability to go into such deep introspection with yourself and look at your parts that have come up in your relationship to your daughter that are impacting your relationship with your daughter, and knowing that you need space and time to heal those parts, and that in order for that to take place, you need space and time from your daughter so that you can have a death of the cycle and the patterns that are repeating with her
Mm,
and birth
mhm,
something new.
mhm, mm,
And I feel like that's something that a lot of us feel in many different areas of life. And it's starting to tune into your body and your intuition and what the knowledge you are getting from inside of you that is like, I can't keep doing this.
mhm.
I'm so done here.
Because the problem is never actually the problem. There's always something so much deeper, so much deeper underneath. And whether that's an unmet need that you're not meeting, or whether that's, it could be absolutely anything, but getting crystal clear on what that is. And it will come up in time that it's supposed to, just like it did for me and just like it did for you, Mon, with your death and
Yeah.
rebirth process.
Yeah. And it's just allowing enough silence and stillness to hear it, because you might hear it and feel it, and then you go and scroll your phone, or you go and have a workout, or you go and eat food, or you go and stay busy at work or do the house cleaning, and you ignore that inner scream that is like, I can't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how long, sister, are you going to keep allowing that scream?
And that's
How long
just
you
toxic masculine, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
it
the
is.
toxic masculine's like, I can do this. I've got this. We've got this. We've got Miss Independent or Miss
Mhm.
Independent man, woman, or whatever the situation is. We've got this. We can do this. You've got no one else. You've got this. Like, no, I
Mhm.
actually don't have this.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
need to
And
surrender to that.
I need to surrender and I need to lean on people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that is where I can like surrender into my feminine, come
Mm-hmm.
into my body. I can hear what my body's telling me. And I can lead from that space of trust in my body and trust in the messages I'm getting rather than trying to figure out your life in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I spent a long period of time living in my toxic masculine. We are so conditioned in today's society to be in that energy, that like constant progress, that go, 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 that like more doing, better, achievement, attainment, all of that. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the problem was I was always basing my worth off of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I now live is like the flow of nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know how every winter, like before we go into winter, the trees all lose their leaves, they all let go, they all release. Then under the soil in the darkness where you cannot see it,
Fertile
rebirth is
void.
happening. The fertile void
Mm.
where the trees are being nourished and they're birthing new life. But you don't see that until the spring. And so now I really honor my body like I'm a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going through these cycles and these phases of death and rebirth, of shedding and letting go and inviting in new. And I have desires that I want in my life. I still know certain things I want to do in my mission and my calling. But I don't hold on to a time. I don't hold on to how. I don't hold on to exactly what it's going to look like because I know that as I trust and lean into my body and as I cycle through the phases, that I will become more and more aligned with that and it will birth through me. So there's no force to it. And it's trusting in yourself that that is the journey that you take as a cyclical being, because from the outside looking in, like from most of the conditioning of society and the conditioning that my parents have received, it's like, what are you doing with your life? And a piece that Dani shared with me, she's like, just tell them. And I have so much resistance to tell my parents because I feel like they won't understand. And I think this is like such an invitation that I feel like, oh, that sounds like an interesting piece. I feel like whatever interests you and whatever like your soul is like, oh, I want to learn more about that. That's a calling. Like follow that.
Yeah, that's a direct calling.
So
Seriously,
if
that's a calling.
yeah. So if the death and rebirth cycle like has evoked something in you and you're like, oh, I'm feeling like I need to honor something and like let go of something or like learn about it or whatever it is, follow that calling and learn more about it and know that the more you step into your power and your authenticity and your truth, which is going to be through honoring your death and rebirth cycles, the more you are going to receive judgment from the outside world because they will not always understand.
Mm-hmm. And an interesting. I'm gonna giggle here because we had this conversation a couple of days ago, and I had it arise for me again yesterday when someone asked me, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. So what have you been up to?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, heaps." And I'm like, "Fuck, what can I actually share with this person?" Because most of it is spiritually and energetically and death and rebirth cycles and and I know that that's not what that person wants to hear. They want to talk about how my business is going and all of the new things that's happened and all of the external things that you bought or haven't bought. Oh, business is great. Like all these surface level conversations that you have that most people have. It's all they know, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not wrong, but it just is. But yeah, we were having this conversation the other day about, how have you been? What have you been up to? Oh, just connecting to my womb and my menstrual cycle. What? You're doing what?
Hmm.
Yeah, you've got no idea how much it's connected me and it's just birthed something within me. You watch this space in 6 months' time, you'll be like, holy schmoly. or 3 months
Yeah.
time, right? But it's like just things that
Mhm.
you, yeah,
Yeah, and
conversations.
I literally had that conversation a week ago with my dad. And I think this will be powerful to speak into because if you've experienced something similar, it's important that you know you're not alone. But
Mm-hmm.
my parents genuinely asked me what I'd been up to, and I started to explain to them the cyclical rhythms that I'm living in and how connected I am with my menstrual cycle. My dad was so beautiful and he like was interested in it and like really listening. And then he just did a comment and he said something along the lines of, um, it was like, yeah, but you can't overthink everything, Simone. You've just got to choose something and go and make money and get on with your life. And in that moment, I just breathed and I was like, okay, that's dad's conditioning coming through. He loves me. He loves me. He's wanting what's best for me. But on the inside, my inner child was triggered. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, dad, like really gentle with him. And I was like, I'm just going to go to the toilet. I always find that if I'm triggered or evoked around my family, I just need space to make sure I'm okay. And so I was like, I went to the toilet and I just sat there and breathed and I held my inner child and I was just speaking with her and I was like, what do you need right now? She's like, I need space, I need safety, and I need to get out of here. And I'd been at my parents' house for like 40 minutes. I just got there and I was like, okay. They come back out and I'm very free spirited. So my parents are pretty like understanding of like whatever I do, I'm always around. But I went out back out to my mum and I was like, Mum, I'm just gonna make a cup of cacao and I'm gonna go find a park and I'll be back in a couple of hours. She's like, okay. Dad's like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you going to doing that? He's like, I just need it right now, Dad. I just need it. And so I drove and I found this like massive, massive tree and it had a sign on it and it was like 200 years old. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna sit at the bottom of this. And I was so excited. And like my inner child, I could feel it as I like pulled up in my car. She's like, oh my gosh, like, yes, Queen, we're doing this. I feel so great right now. Like she's so excited that I was honoring her. And I even like I got a picnic mat from my parents' house. I got like my cup of cacao. I had my journals. I had my boom box. I had like all these things. I had my crystals. I had like Palo Santo. I really set it up for it. And I take these things with me everywhere I go. But I set up this little space and I did some breath work. I did a meditation and connected with my inner child. I wrote a poem to her. I journaled. I sat there for over 2 hours and just held myself. And at the end of it, all I could feel was pure love for me, for my whole family, and just everything. Because we are not separate. What I feel in others. And it's like I could just feel the abundance of love because I was able to come back to myself in that. And it's such a huge piece. And I previously would not have done that. Like before moving here, like moving away from people and really coming into connection with myself and going through such a huge cycle of death. Before moving here, I would always make sure my parents were okay and that I did things to please them. And it's not in me anymore. And things they do can impact my inner child, and it's my responsibility to hold her. But it is not bad or wrong that they're saying those things. I know they love me and I know they're on their own journey, and I have absolutely no need to change their journey. But I must hold myself in that. And it was just, yeah, it's such a beautiful piece that I constantly do around family now is remove myself and hold myself. And I also set up spaces when I am with family where I'm leaving the house for certain periods of time to go and do cacao or meditate or breath work that is out of the house in nature. Because I show up as my true self when I am in my body. And I need to regulate my nervous system because most of my family is living in a state of fight or flight. And what we are around, we absorb. Yeah, so it's just a really powerful piece that I trust will inspire some others.
Thank you so much for sharing, sister. I truly believe that that will inspire others. I know that I've had my fair share of being in similar situations as well, and then not connecting or not listening to what you need on the internal world because you don't know how to. and then it will either end in an argument, which majority of the time for me always had ended in an argument and tears, feeling not good enough and not seen, and yeah, all of the things.
Yeah, and it's like to get to a space where it doesn't end in an argument, a death cycle had to take place for that ending of that pattern.
Yeah.
So we don't just change. A pattern doesn't just change. It has to be let go of. It has to end, and an ending is a death for a rebirth and something new to be born. And it's this exciting piece where when I have things come up now, I'll often reach out to Dani and be like, Dani, I'm feeling like I need to release this, or I need to let go of this, or this is coming alive. And it's these new things that come into my consciousness that I know I need to let go of, because as soon as they become aware to me, I must act on them.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I release them, I invite a new and more aligned energy. And that is what I want.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful because we are the ones that are in control of our healing in our life.
Mm.
And when we take responsibility for that, and like we take responsibility for where we are at in our lives, and like all the situations that are currently occurring in our lives are our responsibility. And when you take responsibility, you then have the power to change it, because you're not putting your power in someone else's hands and blaming someone else, or relying on someone else to create circumstances for you that you desire. You're taking responsibility into your hands, and then you are the controller of your destiny.
Yeah.
Mm,
Powerful.
yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the more you tune in with this cycle of death and rebirth, the more you're going to giggle when you catch up with people, and the more that you're going to be like, holy shit, I'm changing so rapidly. Because the more that me and Dani have, as she was speaking into earlier, like the more that Dani and I have tuned into our death and rebirth cycles, the more rapidly we have grown.
Mm.
And it's not something you can truly fathom until you experience. But it's so beautiful, because on the other side of every death is more of an authentic version of yourself, and more aligned connections, and more aligned. Everything in your life just becomes more and more aligned. And it's just learning to surrender and let go.
Come back to safety, come back to the heart.
Yeah. Coming back into your body. I really couldn't have got through like the last few months here if I wasn't in my body.
Mm.
And that looked different for me every day. Like, I don't have a morning practice that looks the same.
Mm.
I do what my body feels like, whether it's like meditation or dancing or breath work or cacao or a rage practice or journaling, or the list goes on, sitting with a chakra. I don't know, like whatever it is that is coming through me energetically in the morning, I do in my body.
Mhm.
And then I'll go and do something else, and maybe I'll spend time with my partner, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go back to my body. And like just learning constantly throughout the day, because I for a period of time would be like, I need to put blocks in my day to be in my body, in my feminine energy.
Yeah, I used to do
And
that, which is a very masculine
it's
container
not,
too. It's
yeah,
great to learn
yeah,
for a structure and for routine, but then take that out. I used to have this
yeah,
alarm that would go off at the 2 times a day, and then I set it for once a day, and every day, and most of the time I'd be in the middle of a podcast or doing something and be like, I don't need to feel my body. I feel my body 100 times a day now. Like I'm living in my
yeah,
body that can go.
yeah. So, and I think it's a beautiful piece of to learn, is like to put in little reminders on your phone potentially, if that
Mhm.
feels aligned.
Mm.
Put in reminders on your phone to connect with your body and just notice the feelings and sensations in your body.
Mm.
And I think an important piece here is like anything that anyone ever recommends is like try it. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, and don't beat yourself up.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's something you could try. But what I do now is I don't try. My body just speaks to me.
Yeah, because you've
So
built that beautiful, deep relationship
yeah.
with your body as well. So you don't need to ask your mind what you need because you just know.
Mhm.
And that comes from deep rest. That comes from slowing down and slower is better, right? Slower is more. And that's the same with your mission and your purpose and your passion and the things that make you happy. You understand what these things are when you slow down and you move away from the external and you come inwards and come internal. You'll start to really understand. You know, a conversation that I have with a lot of people. We're like, what makes you happy? They're like, "Oh, seeing my kids or doing this or doing that," and it's all of these external things or other people's things, right? But it's you never what it's not that I have a lot of conversations with people that are in my circle that we have very deep and meaningful conversations. But generally it can be about all external things. But these aren't the things that actually make you happy. They're not truly makes you happy.
Yeah, and I wonder if a piece there is like those are things we've been taught that should make us happy. So therefore,
Yeah.
from conditioning,
Yeah.
we perceive that as happiness,
Yeah.
and we don't really know the depth and level of happiness we can feel alone.
Mhm.
We haven't really been taught it or exposed to it.
Mhm. Mm.
Mm, yeah, and so the magic of like the death and rebirth cycle really lies in the magic of your body,
Yeah.
the very thing that most of us have been completely disconnected from.
Mhm. Surrender and let go.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I do ask that if this podcast has inspired you, then please leave us a review. Take a screenshot, share, tag Mon and myself on Instagram, and reach out to us if you need any support. If you're going through a death and rebirth cycle of your own and you're not sure what to do, having a listening ear or a sister is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, having someone there is so important.
Mm. Sending you all so much love and light. We love
Yeah,
you.
we love you. Have a beautiful day.
Bye.
Bye.